Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Carrie with bluescitypickin, and if you are new here, I am a part-time reseller that goes around to estate sales, thrift stores, yard sales, and attempts to find things to flip for a profit on eBay. I am recording this on New Year's Eve, so the 30th of December, and we are going over our sales for the week of December 22nd, so Christmas week. As expected, sales slowed down quite a bit at the beginning of the week, just not much at all, but then after Christmas, they were popping. So I was super happy, super excited with where my weekend ended, and on Saturday I sold 10 things, which is unfathomable for me. I haven't done that in probably a year. I also celebrated my 1 year of really considering this a legitimate side hustle. I have tracked that I bought my first thing at Goodwill right about a year ago to attempt to flip for a profit on eBay. So let's get into some numbers here. This week I sold 35 items, which is my goal. So I was absolutely ecstatic with that. I do go over a couple of different numbers. I have gross sales, which is the all-in number, so inclusive of sale, tax, and shipping. I have the price that we agreed upon to pay, which I call a sales price. I have what I paid for it, and then I have my gross profit, as well as the days on the platform. Let's see here. So gross sales for the week, $876.36. Sale price of $645.76. I paid $114.61 for everything that was sold, and my gross profit was $409.66. So super happy with that. Once again, I was able to move out a number of older items that I would not buy again. So I'll cover some of those in a bit. My average sale price was $18.45. My minimum was $6.23, maximum of $55.95. And then gross profit minimum was average was $11.70. Min, I actually lost money, but I'll explain that. And then max was $40 on something. I'm going to throw in some new numbers this time. Let me know if you find them helpful. So my margin was 63%, which is phenomenal. You won't find any other company that can do that. So happy with that. I'm going to add in like the store allocation of where I bought things and how I profited, as well as kind of the genre of things that I sell, because I'm an everything seller. I know there's some folks out there that are super niche that I've talked to. I choose not to niche in on one thing. That way, if I get bored, I can switch to something else. I really just focus on things that I find interesting and I will be excited to list. And without further ado, let's get into it. So I sold, this was a multi-quantity buyer. I sold a set of 4 salad forks and a set of 4 dinner forks from the Rogers silver lace pattern. They sold for $28.85 for each set. I paid $2, or I bought these at an auction back in May, and I allocated $2 for each set of 4. And so I profited $23.66 and $23.26 after 220 days listed. Next up is this vintage 1989 Tiger Electronics John Elway like handheld game. I picked this up at an auction lot back in May of travel games and kids' toys. I think I paid like $2 for this entire table of travel games, with the hope that some of these older ones worked, and it did. The buyer paid, it sold for $8.89. I have long recovered all of my money on this, and I made $6.48 after 201 days. I think I went back and I looked at my profit for that table. I think I've made like $70 or $80 on a $2 investment. So that was an unexpected banger. Next up is a vintage blazer. This was by Ice Cube by Michael. I don't know that brand. I picked this up at Goodwill for $3 back in March. I was ready to see it go, so I sold it for $10 and profited $3.60 after 273 days. Next up is a board game. This is one of the things I do like selling. I love selling vintage board games. I opened this up at an estate sale. It looked complete, and when I got it home and counted everything, it was complete. I paid $5.15 for this back in October. The buyer paid $28.90, and so I profited $18.50 after 70 days. Next up is another accessory out of my Whatnot lot. If you've been watching my cha-chings, you've seen me continue to sell little vintage toys and accessories. And of course, my computer just had a panic attack. What are you doing? I'll be right back. And I'm back. My computer had a complete conniption, so I had to shut it down and restart it. So that was about 15 minutes of fun. Alrighty, so I think I was talking about my Whatnot score and the vintage, toy accessories that I've been selling out of that buy, which I'm already well into the profit on. This was a G.I. Joe Cobra Techno Viper backpack, and it had all the little pieces that went into it. The buyer paid $11.99. I have $1 into it off of Whatnot. I made $8.06 after 35 days. Next up is another item out of that kids travel game lot that I just talked about earlier, which is interesting because it's been a while. This is a lot of pocket chess, Chinese checkers, and a trivia game. The buyer paid $6.23. I had $0 into it, so I made $4.19 after 225 days. Next up is a rare Imaginext toy. This was Spacesuit Woody from Toy Story. This is from Toys R Us back in 2012. I was not able to find any of these listed, and it actually had the little character that you shoot, and it had the thing that you shoot out of the front of the ship as well. So the buyer paid $33.95. I have $0 into this because I've already recouped my money on where I bought it, which was at a kids consignment sale back in August. I bought a massive Toy Story lot. So I made $29.64 after 116 days. Next item is a Christmas item that sold on Christmas. This was a Fitz and Floyd Merry Christmas like sentiment tray, trinket tray. I got this out of cleaning out some stuff out of my own Christmas decorations that I don't use anymore. The buyer paid $11.92, so I made $9.73. It was listed almost a year though. It took a long time to sell, so it took 331 days to sell. Next up is I don't even know what this is. I picked this up at a toy auction back in May. I paid $2.51 for it. Buyer paid $16.66, so I made $9.55 in 206 days. I would not pick that up again. Next up is this vintage enamel, like teeny tiny little pill box that I bought at Goodwill for $1.06. So if you hear me say something like $1.06, it's because it was 99 cents and I put the tax on it because I don't want to be eating the cost of my tax. So when I put it in my purchase price, I always have the tax included. That's why there's weird numbers in there sometimes, just so you know. It sold for $12, so I made $8 on this in just 2 days. Next up is a set of Pier 1 salt and pepper shakers. They were very, very cute. I thought they would sell for a little bit more, but I was happy to go ahead and move them out. I bought these at Goodwill back in August for $3.13. Buyer paid $7, and so I made $3.46 in 137 days. I just don't have a lot of luck with salt and pepper shakers, so I'm gonna be smart and stop picking them up. I say that, but when I see cute ones, I'll probably still do it because I'm not a good role model here, guys. Next up is this little Blippi figure. It came out of a huge lot of toys that I picked up at an estate sale that was like a bag. back in November. You may have seen me pick it up because it was the one that was so good. I went back and I bought more. So I have 50 cents into this. It sold for $7.99, and so I made $5.97 in just 19 days. Next up is another thing of flatware. This was a W.M. Rogers & Son. This was a gold-plated flatware set of 4 dinner forks. It sold for $11.35. This came out of a clean out at my parents' house. So 0 into it and profited $9.08 in 154 days. Next up is, I think this was my second one of these I've sold in the last month, which is fascinating because I've had them for months and months and months. This was a 1964 Parker Brothers, I think it's Milborn. I'm not French, so I don't know. French card game. It was complete. I paid $1.79 for this at Goodwill. It sold for $23.75, and so I made $17.48 in 214 days. Next item is a set of Hunter women's boot socks. I picked these up at an auction back in, I think, the end of March. It says May on here, but I don't think that's right. And I picked up a lot of 2 of these, and I paid $5.75 each for them. They sold for $15.89, and so I made $5.95 after 211 days. Not something I would pick up again. Next up is a Cabela's red barn chore coat. I paid $6.99 for this at Goodwill back in October. It sold for $28, so I made $14.46 on it after 51 days. If it was in a larger size, I think it would have sold for more, or I would have probably just kept it for myself. But a medium, it did not fit me. Next up is a set of 2 Goebel red sparrows. Picked this up from an auction lot where I bought a bunch of these Goebel birds. I have probably a few left, I think. So I have $8.05 into this. They sold for $23.76, and I profited $10.77 after 180 days. I do not think I would pick these up again because they were kind of a pain in the butt to ship because they're breakable and all that jazz, and I didn't make a lot off of them. Next on the list of things I wouldn't pick up again is a Chico's size 1 denim. I paid $6.99 for these at Goodwill back in February before I knew better and was watching things that said that Chico's was a pickup. Categorically false. For me anyway. I know it sells well for other people, but I've had trouble selling pretty much anything Chico's that I pick up. They sold for $9, so I made 5 cents on this after 213 days, but guess what? It's gone. Next item was technically my worst sale of the week, but I'm fine with it because it's gone. This was a Funko Pop from a mystery box that I bought back in the summer, I believe. Buyer paid $20. I had $20 into it, and so I lost basically shipping $4.36, but it sold within the day, and I'm happy it's gone. Next up, an item, another weapon from my Whatnot lot. This was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. It was a Samurai Leo sword and holster. Buyer paid $8.99. I have $1 into it, so I made $6.06 after 38 days. Next up was one of the plushies from my big estate sale haul a few weeks ago. I paid $1.30 for this. The buyer paid $9, and I profited $5.80 after just 5 days. Next up was something out of my personal clean outs. This is an Alex and Ani Disney Parks Marvel Avengers bracelet. It had the Infinity Stones on it. It was super cute. It sold for $16.80, and so I made $14.06 after 153 days. Just don't really wear bracelets anymore. Next up is an ugly sweater that sold after Christmas. And since I didn't want to hang on to it for another year, I just went ahead and let her go. This was a Tiara International, great brand for holiday sweaters if you can find them for a reasonable price, which I did. I paid $3.56 for this at Goodwill back in September. It sold for $16.77 and I made $7.57 after 111 days. I think what I learned about ugly sweaters this year is there's got to be something super interesting about it that makes it different than some of the other like ugly Christmas sweaters. So the ones that I had that sold the best this year, that I made the best profit on, one of them was like Scotty dogs with like Santa hats on it or something like that. And the other one was Christmassy and it had bows on it, but it could be worn outside of Christmas too. So I think I'll be a little bit more picky on what I pick up as far as ugly Christmas sweaters for next year. But I'm not complaining. It sold after Christmas and I made $7.57. So she's gone. Next up is another weapon out of my whatnot lot. This was a vintage Transformers Gen 1 hot rod short and long photon gun. This sold for $15.99. I have $1 into it, so I made $11.43 after 25 days. Another item from Whatnot. This was a North Face jacket. I picked this up with a couple other items from the store, so the shipping was very, very cheap because it had been bundled. I picked it up thinking that my husband would want it. He said no, so I sold it for $15. It cost me $8, so I made $7.95 after 79 days. Next up, something else from Whatnot. Whatnot was popping this week, y'all. This was from my Atari lot, so I was still listing a good number of Atari things over the last few days, and so I think that benefited me. This was a 1979 Atari 400 motherboard. All of these are sold untested as is, no returns on them. This one sold for $29. I had $1 into it, so I made $24.37 after 17 days. Next up was one of my better sales for the week. This was a set of Tony Llama boots that I picked up back in November. I paid $10.99 for them at Goodwill. They sold for $55.95 and I profited $34.59 in 52 days. So I'm super happy with that return. I did not clean them. I did not do anything to them. I just took pictures of them and set them on the shelf. So that's the kind of profit that I like. Next item is something that I picked up at an estate sale for 50 cents back in April. This was a really weird like sculpture doll kit, but it was a craft and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. It was not as cool as I thought it was. It took 213 days after it was listed to sell, and I think I've had it for much longer than that. So it sold for $9.73 and I made $6.95 on it. So I'm fine with that. Next up is something else that came out of my parents' clean out. This was a Mastermind pegboard game made in England. Buyer paid $11, so my parents should get about $8 after 195 days. Next item is a Brighton crossbody. I picked this up at the beginning of December for $7.58. I thought it was really interesting because it had the wallet built into the purse and it was a crossbody with like some adjustable straps and lots of zippers. So I picked it up because it was unique and my gut was right, and it sold for $25. So I profited $12.36 after just 10 days. Next item is a Woolrich flannel shirt. This didn't end up being as vintage as I thought it was, and it was rough, right? So I would not pick up a Woolrich shirt in this condition again, but it did sell and I made some money. So I paid $3 for this at one of my local thrift stores. It sold for $10 and profited $5.08 after 47 days. Next up, another thing of flatware. This was something I picked up at an auction back in May. This is a set of W.M. Rogers tulip looking original. It was a meat fork and a serving spoon. Buyer paid $10.75. I have $0 into it, so I made $8.82 after 178 days. Next item is another Atari item. This was one of the reasons I bought the lot, right? Because the seller pulled it up. I could see what it was. I went and did comps. There were none listed. And based on historical sales, I thought I could get about $50 for it. And I did indeed get $50 for this Atari 810 diagnostic cartridge, and it was untested as is, no returns. I allocated $3.77 to this. So my gross profit was $39.69, and that sold the same day I listed it, and I was super happy with that. And last but not least, is my Little Life Pets. This was Rolly, the kissing bulldog puppy. He came from Goodwill back in August. I paid $2.99 for him because I thought he was cute and he worked, and my kids played with it for a little bit, and then I listed it. It sold for $16.80, and I made $9.61 after 137 days. So pretty great week. My average amount of time for everything listed was about 124 days. The longest was 331, and the shortest was something that sold within a few hours. To get down to like the allocations of profits that I was talking about earlier. So based on where I bought things, my profits were about 25, 25, 25 between Goodwill, whatnot, and auctions. And then estate sales, consignment sales, and other places were about 25% as well. So not surprising to see that based off of my recent sourcing strategies with getting some more things off of whatnot, which has worked out really well for me. The first time I did it, I was a little skeptical because I think the particular vendor I was buying from, they had a lot of followers and a lot of people in their show, and it was a very specific kind of show as opposed to like a storage unit clean out. So the ones that I found most effective so far were the storage unit clean outs, where they just throw a box on the table and it's just full of stuff, and you're gonna have to sort through it and look through it, but the profit is better on those. As far as the genres of things that I sell, it's once again like 25, 25, 25, 25 split across like collectibles, which is like including vintage and modern, clothing, including like shoes and accessories, house things, so like kitchen and decor, and then toys, which I included board games, both vintage and modern in there. So my profits are split pretty evenly, which I think helps me as I move throughout the entire year, keep my sales pretty consistent, because I'm not single threaded. I'm an everything seller, so I don't suffer from the same slowdowns that other people do. I will say I did feel the summer slowdown this year, but I also didn't feel like the hop in Q4 like a bunch of people tell you you're going to get. So I'm good with consistency. Since I do this part-time, it works within my frame and amount of time that I have available to make this work. So I'm super happy with that, super happy with the results as we come down to the end of my first full year as a part-time reseller. I'm going to be putting out a video that kind of talks about the 5 things that I'm going to keep doing, and then the 5 things that I've learned that I'm not going to do anymore. One of which should be not buying salt and pepper shakers, but I'll probably still do it because I think they're fun. So if you like this kind of content and you made it to the end, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe and a comment down below on what's the one thing you've learned in your reselling journey this year, and what's the one thing you wouldn't do again after having some time in reselling. I appreciate you all more than you know. I'm super excited. I hit 200 subs this week, so thank you so much for coming back and subscribing and commenting. Y'all are the absolute best, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.